All right, next week, beginning on Monday, jury selection in the morning on Monday, and potentially opening statements already Monday afternoon in the trial of State Senator Nicole Mitchell, who faces a charge of burglary. And Paul Bloom is joining us now as we look ahead to this. I know, Paul, I mean, you covered a lot of this as it happened, too, in the wake of it, and now preparing for next week. What do we expect here? I know it's going to be a relatively short trial. Any idea, I mean, how many witnesses we're talking about or what we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's expected to go basically next week. I'll be somewhat surprised if we get a quick jury, just given the amount of attention this case would have generated. We do expect, they'll argue some pretrial motions Monday. The jury will come in. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a questionnaire, and you kind of got to fill in what you know about the case, what you might, if you have some conclusions you've already reached. But yeah, she's is a sitting state senator from Woodbury. This goes back more than a year now. The trial twice delayed. Rob, once just in the last few weeks because of the overnight, of course, the horrific attacks and political assassination of Melissa Hortman, and it was scheduled to start the Monday after that weekend. In our understanding, I don't know if Fox 9 has necessarily confirmed it independently, but I've certainly seen in some reporting that Nicole Mitchell, was on Vance Belter's alleged, hit list, manifesto list that he had. But yeah, she is, again, for those who don't remember it, going back to April of 24 last year, she's admitted to going into the home of her stepmother. There had been, she is described in a social media post with some of her defense filings, that she had gone back into the house. Her dad had passed away about a month earlier, and that she was going to retrieve some sort of personal mementos.
I know it mentioned like ashes maybe, and some shirts and some things that were. And she had said that she had been hoping to get some of that, but there had been no communication with her stepmother, that was kind of a broken relationship perhaps. And then that led to her at 4:45 a.m., 4:45 a.m. or so, being in this home dressed in black with, that drove up to Detroit Lakes, admits that, from her home in Woodbury, 200 some odd miles. It becomes kind of an intruder situation. Clearly startled the stepmother. She called police. I think there's even one mention in the 911 report that the stepmother had stepped on the intruder, and police would arrest Nicole Mitchell, dressed in black clothes, black hat on. She allegedly had a flashlight with a sort of a black sock to sort of control light emission down in a bathroom in the basement. And she's quoted in the criminal complaint kind of saying, I'm no good at this. I was just trying to retrieve some of my dad's stuff. You're right, based off some ashes. She would eventually, it sounds like, blame, perhaps some paranoia and some Alzheimer's and a deteriorating health condition. I believe in reference to the stepmother, but we certainly will learn more this next week. But what's interesting about this case, and why I think it's important to have me on, is this is one of the Minnesota cases under the new laws that will allow for cameras in the courtroom. Yeah. So I'll be able to join you next week on the live stream, and we'll be able to kind of to watch the proceedings unfold. Again, a trial expected to last a week up in Becker County in Detroit Lake. So it's not very close to St. Paul in the state capitol, but certainly a lot of eyes going to start shifting 200 miles up north. Because Senator Mitchell holds an important seat. It's a one seat DFL advantage. And then right now, should something happen, in the criminal court, what would happen to her seat? So, and of course that was part of the political wrangling and back and forth, or drama there too, about those on the Republican side of the aisle saying she should resign her seat immediately, and of course the DFLers wanted to maintain that one seat majority. So their arguments were that no, I mean, she's been charged, she hasn't been found guilty. And that led into that kind of drama there at the Capitol. But now as we head into this trial, I mean, it seems like what they're accusing her of, which is burglary, and it looks like all the evidence would support that charge, that she did essentially break into her late father and stepmother's home in the dark of night with, a burglary type, attire, etc. But then she's saying that she was trying to get things that her stepmother wasn't allowing her to get that belonged to her father. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what her defense is about, what led to her essentially breaking into her late father's home. I mean, what, any sense here of what kind of defense that they might mount?
Yeah, and I think we've seen it in some of the defense filings, the pretrial motions they attempted. Nicole Mitchell's legal team have tried to get the charges tossed out, sort of for a lack of evidence. I mean, I personally think, reading, again, the motions, what I could imagine in the courtroom is sort of a tugging at the human heartstrings here. There's going to be an acknowledgement that yes, I was in the house, but a month before my dad had died, the stepmother figure, the relationship was fraying. I was concerned about her health, her well-being. Was this the smartest idea? This was once sort of my home where I was always at one point welcome here. In one filing, the son had a bedroom in this house once upon a time, meaning Nicole's, the senator's son. Mm-hmm. So I could just see, you get 12 members of a jury up there in northern Minnesota and, start talking about, the deterioration of mental health, of conditions, of a grieving daughter 1 month removed from her father's death and funeral. And do you just sort of, kind of look for an acquittal of that way, in that direction? She has a lot at stake as a sitting state senator. She recently retired. She was a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard. We know her as a former television meteorologist in the Twin Cities. She has a lot at stake here, and these felony charges, again, 2 burglary counts, one for kind of doing the burglary itself, and then the second possession of burglary tools. So you could see a jury, kind of a higher count, a lesser count, and we'll see what they did. But clearly, she's willing to take this all the way. I mean, presumably, there was at least some form of opportunity, I would imagine, to reach out to the prosecution. I have no insider information that a plea was offered, but you would think in the way, it's not it's not a capital punishment type case, but someone with such high profile, you can see maybe trying to work this out short of a spectacle that next week will now become with the camera in the courtroom. And clearly this is someone who's willing to whatever she believes in, take it to a jury, and then believes in her innocence, if you will.
Yeah.
But the evidence is going to be tricky to overcome.
Yeah, and so I would assume that, again, we'll see how this plays out with once the defense gets their turn, that it may be out there that, this was the only option. What would you do? This was my father's house. This is what, my family home, and I wasn't being allowed in it. And yes, I mean, she even had made some comment that I know I did something bad, but maybe trying to, justify it to the jury and have some sympathy from the jury and sort of like, what would you do in this situation? It wasn't breaking into a stranger's home. It was my family home.
Yeah, and make it clear, sort of have an admission up until, it becomes a criminal admission, and then, try to explain the behavior and why that was, in her mind, her only option. But, she's certainly, driving 200 miles, the middle of the night, with a crowbar, dressed in black, allegedly, with a backpack, with supplies. The behavior is still, you're going to have to get over that hurdle. Clearly with, a jury when they think about what they've done. But you're right. If you fall on the knees and just be like, what else was I supposed to do? It was kind of desperate times, call for desperate measures, sort of not proud of what I did, but it does lead us in, as we were just having this conversation, you would have to think ultimately, right, that the senator has to take the stand to tell her own story.
I would expect that. Yeah, because it'll be, again, if she doesn't testify in her own defense to try to explain her mindset and, that this wasn't a stranger's home, this was her family's home that she was no longer apparently being allowed into, and that she wasn't trying to steal things from her stepmother, but things that belonged to her late father that had meaning to her. It's a lot of gray area in there, and I would think that she would have to go on the stand for that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons now, we were talking about the politics here, and the Democrats eventually came around to asking her to step down. Governor Walz, the Senate party leader, Aaron Murphy, would eventually ask for her resignation. She did not. She was sort of excommunicated from the DFL caucus. She doesn't, meet with, with the party anymore. I mean, obviously it's out of session at the minute. She continues to vote along a DFL party line, but I do think there was enough gray area in this case. You think about, perhaps if we look at Senator Eichhorn, who immediately resigned, when he was accused of soliciting a minor for prostitution in the interim since this alleged crime occurred, the burglary. There was, Republicans could point, look, our lawmaker stepped aside immediately, no fight, didn't fight the ethics, resigned immediately, didn't risk expulsion, and Mitchell hasn't. And I do still think there is that element of a little bit of gray, like, boy, is this sort of more of a family
dispute
medical
that
dynamic,
led to
family issue, as
led to
opposed
some poor decisions and criminal charges here because of what happened. Yeah, and that's what makes this an interesting case, because there's a lot of different angles you can look at this thing from. And then of course the outcome for the state politics too, because and
then it'll be interesting to have that camera in the courtroom up north. It'll be interesting. We'll get that. I'll join you Monday as the coverage comes live. But witnesses will get the opportunity to sort of object to being on camera. So we may not be able to track all of the proceedings, but it will be interesting to see how sort of the small town prosecutor goes after how they try to show a crime was committed, and then in turn how the defense, I think, will make this a very personal, intimate family situation.
Yeah. All right. Well, that begins Monday, and we've seen this before in many trials where you never know how long jury selection is going to take. You've seen them take 2 hours. You've seen them take 2 weeks.
Exactly.
So, all right, that begins Monday, and we'll be hearing from you then.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.